So here is what I propose. We normally do this in a room where it's easy to interact with people, but the Padlet is a kind of convenient device, so we can use that as well. Um, each of you in the groups, thank you very much, have put some challenges out and some ideas. And I'm going to concentrate for group one. If the person who put it up first is still with us, it'd be great to have their take on it. But I do think it's a not an unusual problem. I have it with a lot of my executive students on a particular diploma class that I teach, um, where you get
So,
a mix.
yeah. So I was
Duncan.
in, yes, I was in group one. In fact, there were just two of us, and I don't think the person is still with us. So maybe I'll just summarize. So he teaches for a large open university style university in the Netherlands, and therefore teaches a lot of mature students, who many of which come from the not-for-profit sector. So he's saying that the classic problem they face is translating the for-profit materials to their sorts of jobs. I know we've made some efforts to do it, but maybe there's more we can do.
Yeah, we have the cost-cutting themes. Who would like to comment on this?
Well,
Who shares this?
well, I'm happy to comment if you want. I mean, in the sense that you seem to suggest that Kevan would, but I mean, I've done a lot of work in the not-for-profit sector. I don't know if in not-for-profit you're including. Are you including public services as well? I guess so.
I
I
think
don't
so,
know.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think this is a classic problem of we think that strategy is about one thing to all people, and it's not. I mean, translate materials relating to for-profit businesses. Well, why would you be using necessarily? Why would you be prioritizing material relating to for-profit businesses? You wouldn't, because they're not for profit. So you wouldn't be relating those materials. But that leaves a whole bunch of things. In my experience, and I've worked with trade unions, I've worked with the councils, I've worked with the police, NHS. They're not the issues that are. They may be that they should be, and they may need to be introduced. But the primary issues, in my experience, that these people are searching for insights into. One is change, particularly what they would call culture change. I'm not sure it always is, but that's what they call it. And the second would be multiple stakeholders with diverse views about what's going on. The classic problem of we can't easily focus on one stakeholder group. We've got to focus on a whole bunch of stakeholder groups. So how do you reconcile all these different stakeholder groups to a common strategy becomes the problem. And even if you can we do anything about changing what we are? They're the two major issues that come up consistently in all those organizations. So why are we trying to teach them? Why do we regard strategy as primarily to do with for-profit businesses?
Well,
I
yeah,
think
I
we
think
should.
that's a good point. So we have chapters on change, we have chapters on stakeholder, so that's relevant. But I think for my experience, and what I'm asking now is for others to jump in, is the challenge is when you have a mixed class of not-for-profit and for-profit people, and that is often what I face. One of the things I do ask right at the beginning is I'd tackle the issue of purpose, so that I'm upfront
Yeah.
about there may be different kinds of purpose in the class, and in some sense legitimate the non-profit people to try and make things a little bit more complicated.
I think
But
that's right, Richard. But also remember that the same issues to do with change and strategy development and multiple stakeholders relate to for-profit businesses as well.
yeah, so there's a lot more commonality than is on the surface. Does anybody else have some experience that people might want to share?
I face the same situation. I could have a lot of people from public sector in Ireland in the same room as a bunch of bankers and fund managers, right? so
Oh,
so similar to Richard, I'd say, right, it's not all relevant. You know, maybe some of you are coming from an SME background, some of you family business, some of you are in the corporate world, some of you public sector, Central Bank of Ireland. Take what's relevant. Take what's relevant to your situation, to your organization, to your context. It's not all relevant. It can't possibly be, you know. Take what's relevant and use it to good effect. But I do, you know, start out similarly with purpose. You know, lots of good contributors there. Collins and Boris, 1996, Malnight et al., 2019. Even Porter's Five Forces, there is a public sector version of that has been adapted to capture the public sector. So take Collis and Ruckstadt 2008, where they talk about, you know, do you know what your strategy is? Have you got a strategy? But they point to mission statement, vision, strategic objectives. All organizations doing strategy should have these things, irrespective of whether you're for profit or not for profit. It's still critical to your business, you know. And like Gerry points out, strategic change, leadership, strategic change, stakeholder engagement, they're all, the various stakeholder groups, they're all jockeying for position in terms of their priority is the most important, and you're trying to balance those priorities. You're pragmatic. I think you've got to be very pragmatic. I think if I've learned anything from it, be very pragmatic in your approach to who's in the room and say, look, there's something here for everyone, but not everything is for everyone, you know, and make the best sense of what's available to you. Use it to good effect. So
thank you, Eamon. I think that's good. It's partly about setting expectations clearly at the beginning, that you're going to learn some bits and others less. But Clive's making a good point in the chat that actually there are many opportunities for each side to learn from each other. So it's not actually a kind of apartheid with two different audiences, but there's actually stuff that people from the private sector can learn from the public sector. It's worthwhile just reminding them that there was the public sector which generated or developed the notion of strategy in the first place. So I find that a helpful discussion. Clive, do you want to add anything on that, or does anybody else want to share some of their experience or their solutions, indeed?
I didn't really want to.
My experience is actually I've been working with I mean a volunteer organization or organizations for other non-for-profits that organize and educate them, and my experience is often that you have, like Eamon said, you have to ask them to adapt the different frameworks and so forth for their purposes, and sometimes they actually rush away and become too enthusiastic, and they use the frameworks exactly as for profits one. And I think I mean, if we look at the book, I mean, going from chapter 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 so forth, I mean, that's highly relevant. I mean, macro environment, well, that's for all non-for-profits. I mean, building a unique set of resources and capabilities, that's also relevant for non-for-profits. Thinking about the closer sector and closer environment, well, that's also relevant. So I think going through the book, many chapters are relevant. I think that perhaps the perception is that, well, this is only for profit, and I think well, that's also a task for us, perhaps in the next edition, to really convince readers in that respect.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, Patrick, because I think it's the task of persuasion in the classroom too, that I find that the not-for-profit people come into the class feeling either a sense of premature alienation, anticipating it not being relevant to them, or excessive deference, i.e., oh, the profit people, they're the serious guys, they got stuff to tell us. So we need to equal the playing field and make it an inclusive playing field right from the start. Eamon, you mentioned the 5 forces developed for the not-for-profit sector.
Yeah, there was an adaptation.
Could you put it in the chat? That would be lovely.
I'll look for it. They've replaced one of the forces with political influence or political power. Yeah. So I will look for it and share it with you, Richard. There
I
is.
think
That'd be wonderful.
isn't it by Aidan Vining in
I think so.
International Public Management Journal.
Well done,
I
Duncan.
include that. I include that for profits too. I mean the political influence, because for some industries, I mean the political part in terms of regulation. If we think about energy or telecommunication or TV networks, that's essential because they set the close rules for the industry. And if they are not there, well, if they can't handle that in some way, well, they lose out completely.
That's right, Patrick. Thank you, Duncan, for the reference. One of you perhaps could put it into the chat so that everybody's got easy access to it.
And just on that, Richard, I'd add in TISA's, I was only reading it last week, in TISA's 2020 paper in Strategic Management Review on future issues and strategy, he actually has a whole section dedicated to government and kind of the role of dynamic capabilities for government and not-for-profit, and how we need to be looking beyond the world of profit, you know, in a multipolar world. So there's a lot written on the role of strategy in not-for-profit public sector. So we need to be aware of that.
I think that's really important. Again, if you could share that reference, TIS and Strategic Management Review, that would be really good.
2020, future issues and strategy, 2020. Yeah.
And I'll mention in chapter 3, we have something on non-market strategy, responding to Patrick's point. You know, we say that private sector organizations have to do non-market strategy as well as market strategy. Ask Apple, you know, that's become very salient. That's tremendous. Would anyone like to add to that? Aidan, thank you. Aidan Vining, thank you. I'm not sure whether we have it in the exploring strategy, but it sounds like something we should include, maybe as a thinking differently. Thank you very much. Anyone else on this? If I can see group 2, the digital material is a lot of, so it's group 3. I think Rufus has an answer to that, and the digital teaching material developed by Pearson. Perhaps Rufus, you'd like to mention some of what's on there.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So we've got a number of things. Firstly, there is the strategy experience simulation, which some of you will be very familiar with, and we showcased here a few times, and that's a large immersive simulation. And then for exploring strategy, we've got a number of different versions. The two I'd particularly highlight would be the Pearson e-text and the Revel version. Both of those are interactive versions where we've interspersed the text with videos and animations and self-assessment questions, so students can read a little and then do a little, test their knowledge and really interact with what they're learning. What I'd actually ask back before talking a bit more is it'd be great to hear a little bit about what you're using and particularly what you're looking for in terms of digital material. One thing we have heard quite a lot of in strategy recently is a request for some small, shorter simulations. So the strategy experience is a large simulation you'd either spread out throughout a semester or play intensively over a couple of days, whereas we are hearing requests for simulations that could be fit into half an hour or an hour within a single seminar or something like that. But it'd be great to hear from you what you're all looking for and what you're using.
What's missing in your digital offer now? I would like personally to have one single place where everything worked. So I could do a Padlet, I could do a chat. Does that exist? And foolproof too, because it's me.
Yeah, I suppose the best recommendation there is that's probably integrating different technologies into your VLE. All of our products integrate directly into a VLE if the institution's purchasing them. So that's probably the best one, although that varies a lot from one VLE to another. VLE or LMS, they're the same thing, just different terminology.
Okay, anyone else got some experience that they'd like to share on that? Okay.
I suggest we move on.
I think so. So to a certain extent, Group 4 raised the same issues, and there are some solutions offered, particularly on the digital cost-cutting theme, which we'll want to develop. But Group 4 has something on getting other stakeholders on board, strategy developed by top management teams. Has anyone got anything on that? Who raised that if they're there? I've got one small technique I use, but
I think it was Tina. I don't think she's around in Group 4. I don't think she's still here, but she raised this issue about she has been teaching strategy for many years, and now she's working with this in practice and coaching coaching organizations. And then she suddenly realized that, well, she thought she knew everything about strategy, but when it comes to getting other stakeholders on board, when it comes to implementing strategy, that's a whole different thing. So that's the issue she raised. But one solution that she gave herself was to invite practitioners and have them to present in front of class in terms of how they deal with it, and then not only getting the official version in terms of everything went smoothly and we implemented the strategy perfectly, but actually to tell the real story about the complications in terms of getting all stakeholders on board.
Yeah, that sounds good. Which of our case studies is good on getting stakeholders on board or them falling off? I'm just trying to think about the case studies, which might be particularly
Richard,
suitable.
I guess the Vaasa City case is
Yes.
pretty kind of classic, trying to kind of, recognize that there are lots of different stakeholders who have different kind of power and influence, and that's quite a nice one because also it uses strategy tools. So I think that's probably a good example.
Yeah, so the Vaasa City is a city council which is trying to develop a strategy using the strategy mapping tool in particular. And of course, a city, I think it's a small city in Finland, has many pluralistic elements. I was talking to Marco about that case recently, the author, and he was talking about how the Finnish Patriot Party has become it's not quite called that, but it was Finnish Patriot Party has become a major influence in the city and a disruptive influence to the previous coalition. So keeping everybody on board has become even more challenging. I sometimes use a dynamic stakeholder map where I map each of the blobs for different stakeholders, the size of those blobs representing their power, and the length of the, as it were, bar linking the blob to the center, showing their interest. And what I actually even got somebody developed it for me, a dynamic one where you can show the blobs getting smaller or larger as stakeholders get more or less powerful, and the bars joining them to the center getting more or less long according to how attentive those were. So in that sense, it maps the dynamics of stakeholder power and attention in a fairly graphic way. But it was rather difficult to put in the textbook because you can't do graphics like that. Maybe we can in Revel. Maybe I'll discuss that. That's my approach to it, but it's not quite the same as having an answer to Tina's question. How do you actually do it? It's just a way of mapping it. Yeah, can you advise an example of the blob stakeholder map? Yeah, I'll find it. Yes. Maybe we'll put it in the newsletter. Yeah, that's something for the newsletter. Thank you. I may not be able to find it in the next 10 minutes or quarter of an hour whilst semi-chairing this session. Okay. What do you think? Are we all right on that? I'm still concentrating on problems. I believe Sylvia is still here. He's got the Netflix Spotify business model. Sylvia, if you're here,
I'm still here.
It sounds quite cool.
I'm still here. Hello together. Yes, I used the business model Spotify limited series from Netflix on to ramp the students up to the items and the theory. And it's really a perfect match because they have episodes for the vision, the industry, coder, partner, artist. So every stakeholder is seen from his side or her side, and in the end, it fits all together. So you can imagine that the atmosphere when I started the lecture was quite motivated, and everybody knows Spotify, and most of the class had Spotify on their handy or on their mobile phone. So it was an easy start, and immediately everybody could talk about.
Fabulous. How did you run the class? Tell us a little bit. I mean, did you say you've got to watch all 6 episodes beforehand, or what happened?
I told them that I would like them to see or to look at, and of course I couldn't say you have to, because otherwise they had to buy an or had to buy a month's fee and so on. So what I learned, they organized themselves, and somehow everybody was on top, and therefore it was before, and then it was easy to start the discussion with all of them.
Yeah, it's really important to have that common base for classroom discussion. Thank you, Sylvia. And then you ran it as an in-class exercise. Then did that take a whole class, or?
I mean, I had a one. It was a Master of Advanced Studies, and the topic was really business model and business plan, and it was a perfect match. And I accidentally got on this this limited series, and that's why I said to myself, "Now let's try," and the outcome was perfect.
Right. Okay. That sounds great. Anyone got any questions about this, or suggestions? I mean, it does speak to 2 issues, I think. One is the power of video, and secondly, the importance of having a common platform for classroom discussions. If you've given them a 30-page case and only one person in the room has read it, and 2 have looked at it briefly, and 28 or 50 have not looked at it at all, it's impossible. So something engaging like that seems to be very powerful. Has anyone got any short videos that people could do the similar job? I don't know whether that would help. We do tend to use short videos. I don't actually in class very much, but I do a bit. Funny enough, I do a bit.
But on Revel, of course, we have multiple videos.
That's right.
And I believe some also on our companion website as well.
Yeah, so we should look at Revel. I think Philippe in my group, I don't know whether they're still here, raised the issue of purpose and cynicism.
Yes, indeed. I feel that we sometimes have students who are quite actually cynical about the use of purpose and values. And on the other hand, we have sometimes students who are very strong opinionated, strong opinions, and they tend to clash.
Yeah.
How to deal with that?
Nowadays having students clashing over strong opinions, good thing or bad thing? Once upon a time, I used to say unequivocally a good thing. I don't know whether people would have the same view now. What do we think? Have you found it difficult, Philippe, managing these classroom discussions where they are opinionated?
Up to a point, yes, indeed. Because you don't want to upset but on the other hand, you want to give some guidelines and come to closure.
Yeah. Once upon a time, one almost wanted to provoke and upset.
Still do.
What a surprise.
Gerry and I are the two self-declared dinosaurs around here.
Oh,
but
come
it's
on,
actually...
look, we're getting to the, if we're really seriously getting to the stage where we don't want students to argue about different views, then we really should all resign.
Yeah, well, Keith has a view on this. What do you think, Keith? You're not a dinosaur.
I think I first came to this event in 1992 at Aston University. I think I am a dinosaur, but mostly, yeah, that's true. It was 1992. More seriously, I mean, at my university anyway, it is now compulsory to record lectures and seminars, unless there is a get out of jail card. You can go to the dean and get exemption. That would have to go through a module leader. So on the point of, we all want fantastic discussions and we respect all points of view, but given at my university everything is recorded now, I must admit, personally, I just hold back from maybe lighting a fuse like I must have done years ago, which often got a very good debate, I like to think, because it's all recorded. And of course, so I think the compulsory recording of classes now at my university has led a number of teachers to comment to me that they just hold back a little bit and they play a bit safer, which is a bit sad, really. But I just thought I'd throw that in, how technology in many ways has affected us as teachers. Yeah, that was all. Yeah, thank you.
Keith, I think that's very true. I've assumed since about 2010 that everything is being recorded in my class. And I've told junior faculty that, and it has changed my approach to teaching. Neville, do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I was in Group 8 earlier today, and one approach that I've used, which overlaps, and I put it in the Padlet board, was I try and create a debate, debate in the lecture room.
Oh yeah.
So rather than have me as the lecturer talking to a vast number of students that can number up to 100, one idea I came up with was a debate. Because for me, strategy is not 2 + 2 = 4. Everybody has an opinion. That's why I love strategy. So we were looking at the positive side of digital technology and the negative side of digital technology. And that led to conversations about open strategy, the use of blogs and WhatsApp and various social media digital platforms. And to me, I mean, when I went to university, it was all what you were alluding to earlier, about having that conversation in a safe space and sharing ideas, because that's what strategy for me, the beauty of it. So that was just bringing forward my Group 8 suggestion about, rather than having lectures, having a proper debate where there's a topic which could be controversial, or where you could see 2 different sides of the argument. And that, for me, so there was 2 lecturers. I was on one side. It was like a Rocky versus Apollo boxing fight. We kind of made it fun, and we had VBox as our tool, so students could vote whether they like my opinions more than my colleague. And I think you may know him, Alan Tate, who I work with closely. So that was just adding to the conversation that was kicked off earlier.
Neville, I think that's a brilliant idea, and I've seen it done 30 years ago at Warwick by my operations management colleagues. I think Nigel Slack was on the call earlier on, and he was one of the protagonists in these. My question would be, and this is just a thought, where did you do it in the course? Did you do it at the beginning of the course or at the end or in the middle? I just wonder whether early on in the course would be a really great mechanism for encouraging people to see strategy is about a debate. It was
ironically quite early on, about quarter of the way through the module, and we had it was a TB2 module, so running from January to May. So I think it was February when we did it, and I really enjoyed it. And for me, I really I want to get students engaged in the conversation, because they're a generation below me. I probably am a dinosaur now, but I want students to come forward with their ideas and their thoughts and opinions, because they're from the Generation Z. They're younger people. They grow up with technology as soon as they get born. So I feel hearing their opinions, they're the future leaders, they're the future strategists, hopefully, just gives you a different lens and a different opinion, which I really value, because you can't know everything. You know, you feel like, I mean, I've worked in public sector and private sector, and you gain a lot of knowledge, but you'd be foolish to think you know it all. And having that debate, having those conversations, I think just makes the classroom a more exciting, colourful environment. And as I said, I was really shocked to hear, you know, for me, you have to have those debates. You have to have those arguments, not in a constructive, in a safe way. But that's what I think university life should be about. You know, it's not just reading a textbook. Although I love point strategy, it's about what opinions do you have? What do you want to bring to the table? And you know, strategy for me is, like I said earlier, it's not 2 + 2. It should provoke debate and should be an opportunity for students to get inspired and to have that confidence to present. Because a lot, as you mentioned about the COVID generation, students go into a shell. They struggle to articulate an argument. And for me, that's a key skill that students need to gain as part of their teaching.
I think we're with that, and the very notion of exploring strategy supports that. One small question to you, Neville, and then I'll hand over to Keith. Do you think having that debate in the first quarter of the course affected positively, hopefully, the quality of the student engagement in debates afterwards? Do you think it made a difference?
I think it did, because of what I said to students. It doesn't matter. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Whatever you feel like, you're in a safe environment, and hopefully they gain the confidence to be expressive. I may not agree with them, but I'll always say, I'll respect your idea. And I try and handhold them in a nice way, because I can tell when you're in the front of the class, they get shy and they get nervous and they hide behind their laptops. But I always try and be supportive, because I know, as I said earlier, this generations are struggling to hold a conversation, which is such a shame. And COVID has created this, unfortunately, and it's trying to find ways to overcome it in a positive way and in a supportive way. So I hope it does. But for me, I just want them to be able to, when they graduate and they go into the big real world, that they can hold their own, have a good conversation, and come out as with a strong business acumen, and be able to articulate key ideas to senior people.
I think that's right. Keith, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with what's just been said. I mean, I was intrigued here. I think the way you've organised the book in terms of chapters, you've thought about this issue years ago, and from memory, you've now got I just checked it now. I ought to know. I know, because I do use your book at work. But chapter 14, the debate between deliberate and emergent, which always gets students going. You know, should you have a plan? Should you live on your wits? Didn't you used to have that chapter at chapter 6 or chapter 2?
We had it earlier as Gerry will know, chapter 2.
Yeah.
And
Chapter 2.
we had some debate about where it should go, and maybe it should. There was an argument for it being in chapter 2. And I think Gerry and I slightly disagreed on this.
I think we do.
Definitely we disagreed. Oh, and Jack is with me on with Gerry on this, I suspect. But my argument was, this is a little bit hard to talk about what strategy should be, planned or emergent, before they know anything about strategy. And
Well, that's on the assumption, Richard, that the correct answer is somehow the models that are written in the first few chapters of the book.
Not quite, but anyway, Gerry gracefully conceded that point, maybe mistakenly. Jackie or Keith, you may have another view on this.
My own, sorry, it's a bit of a bad line here, but my own view. I love to have the debates going, and if you get a debate going in the first class, say on a 12-week course, you can keep them almost forever on the 12 weeks. The order in which we teach relates to this. I personally, I try and bring that. Should we have a plan? Should we not have a plan? That chapter 14. Now I try and raise that very, very early in the module. It gets a debate going. Often very simplistic. Should you have a plan in life, or should you live by your wits? Which, whoever you are in this world, that is a debate for ourselves, not just organisations. So I do teach that. I don't go always in the order of your book. Now, I did years ago. I actually teach that quite early. Maybe I'm wrong, but it does get a debate going. And
I can see that.
That's just my view for its worth. Yeah, that's all. Yeah, thanks.
I think Duncan, because he takes the lead responsibility for chapter 1, I think we do still include, we always used to anyway, something about planning your career and your life, and strategy being the equivalent to that. And so that maybe we should use that more as a platform, whether or not, and we might, change the chapter order. Duncan.
Well, of course, a debate could be about almost anything. So in that sense, it doesn't have to be quite so fundamental. So we could have a debate earlier on, even if it's not on the topic we just mentioned. So yeah, good food for thought.
Yeah, thank you. Neville, you still got your hand up. That may just be a legacy hand.
Just a legacy.
Yeah. I do that all the time. Hi, Jackie. Do you have a view on that? I see you.
Yeah, I have a very, very strong view. I have always taught emergent and intendant literally immediately after just introducing the first area about what strategy is and all that. And I personally couldn't teach the course unless I did it that way. and I actually would deliberately say to students, oh, just ignore the fact that it's at the end, because it went from here all the ways to the end. And I was quite upset when I saw it down towards the back end of the text, because strategy actually is ran right across the whole year. We have quite a focus, across the so having it in chapter 14 when I'm in week 2 or 3 and I'm bringing this in, really doesn't sit well for me. But I have always had to teach, and I mean that. I could not teach strategy without initially just introducing those two concepts. Maybe it's just pure practice.
I think we may need to think about that. Gerry, this is on record. Note this well. I may have been wrong.
No, Richard, no. I won't hear of it.
That's on record too. Okay, well, that has given us very useful food for thought, Keith and Jackie in particular, maybe Neville as well. I think Duncan's point may be that we could create a debate about anything, but is something to bear in mind as well. But we also used to call the thinking differently as key debates. Whether that's the right approach, we decided to move away from that as well. But debate is important. Neville, I think you've given us lots of food for thought there. I do like the idea of staging a debate, and I hope you haven't upset your relationships with colleagues with that device. Thank you, Neville. That's great, useful conversation. I've got a point that Jack has raised, if that's okay to mention, about levels of engagement with the true COVID generation, the COVID generation who never understood anything about universities before they came, joined COVID, and then have been shaped by that school experience at 16 or 17. Jackie, do you have a view? I know this is something I see.
Yeah. So I was dealing with undergraduates. So this year, for the first time, and I'm lecturing a very long time, and with different levels, different groups of students, different years. But it's the first time ever that students, they complained when I got them to start doing more than the page case. In fact, it was a 3-page case asked to do in groups of 3 and to consider and present some issues and discussion. 2 weeks later, they complained me that I was stressing them out. And I got complained in the university, and I'm not joking on this. And then I think it got complained to my line manager, and there was different things, and the student came back to me, and then I got complained to the students' union. And then the students' union started engaging. So, I mean, I'm 37 years engaged in education, both private and public, and in other parts as well. And I'm shocked, but I think and I hope that it's a blip, and that that the current first years who've come in, they have done a leaving cert. They have, they have come through somewhat more normal situation, and that it'll just be for maybe I'll have it as well next year. But it was a real eye opener to me, and I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Yeah.
I'm shocked, but not entirely surprised by your story. It's the extreme version of something I've experienced. Does anyone want to comment on that? Offer solutions beyond watching 6 episodes of Netflix? What can we do? I mean, a 3-page case to debate. This goes back to Neville's point. Is not, in my world, very demanding, but I think in our students' world appears to be, for some students, unreasonable. How do we deal with this? Does anyone have any insight into that? Patrick, is it your world too in Scandinavia? Because it is in the UK a bit.
No, I don't recognize it. Well, I recognize in general that students are more concerned about doing too much readings. I mean, I think that's all over. And I think a reason is that, these days, university, that's one thing. And then they have this, internship, and then they have the student union, and then they have this and this and this. And we are just one issue among many that they focus on. So I think
they're also earning money as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've been reminded that our students are, the average student is working 10 hours a week or something of that sort.
Yeah, it's 20 hours. Kind of. I did a survey of final year undergrads. I had 160 of them, and the average is around 20 hours, Richard, in my class, and it's 20. A good class. 20.
Yeah,
up
I
to
agree,
20,
Eamon. Yeah.
So basically, we should treat all students as part-timers.
Yeah, Dr. Tom O'Connor has actually published an article on this. If you Google Dr. Tom O'Connor, you should get a very interesting article on this written by him.
Okay.
And so it's 20 hours plus their obligations to society. Like, for instance, last year, I had a cohort of very good students, and they're all gone to London, and they've all got great internships with banking and finance, but they were hardly turning up to lectures. But then they're inviting in CEOs of very prestigious organizations as guest speakers, at 7 p.m. every other evening of the week. This is the kind of thing that's going on. So they're committed to their societies, they're committed to their sporting foundations, they've got 20 hours a week to work. And what we used to expect from students, it's no longer the case in terms of what they can give us. And how I get around it is I just have to do a lot of casework in teams. They've got to engage with the material, engage with cases, figure it out. And it's about getting them engaged with the material for me. And that's, I deliver the key terms, the concepts, tell the stories, lots of examples, I've got lots of my own experience, but it make it interesting for them.
But this is interesting. It's not them being snowflakes.
No, not snowflakes at all. I've come across
were the students of the 1980s and 1990s.
Yeah, I find some of them the hardest workers I've ever come across. It's just their day to day is so demanding. It's so packed. They're committed to so many different things that we're just one item on an agenda of 10, 15 things that they're committed to on a daily basis. To get that internship today which, you know, a lot of them want to get onto grad management programs. They've got to be able to, you know, tap dance on a pinhead. They've got to be able, you know, they're trying to impress the daylights out of whoever's making the decisions. So they're engaged in everything: sports, societies, activities when they do their Erasmus year, work experience. They've got a lot to contend with. In my view, they've a lot to contend with.
I think this is really interesting, and it reinforces, I think, something that Duncan mentioned right at the beginning, but something we could develop further. Exploring strategy does try and start from the position that, as I think Julia said, the people might be pursuing careers in strategy or related areas. So we ought to be thinking about how exploring strategy can help them get that internship. How exploring strategy. So I think some of chapter 2, for instance, is working with strategy is about that. So Duncan starts chapter 1 with, this is what a young junior strategy consultant might do. That sort of material, I think.
And they love to hear about that. When I covered chapter 17, it was probably the very last lecture I did. So 22 2-hour sessions. We covered chapter 17 and we went through all the illustrations, and the executive who was in India from the US, but was in India and then had to go to Frankfurt, and acquisition came out of the sky, and, you know, he's getting no sleep. And then, you know, the skills they need, when to do an MBA in their career, how they might expect their career to progress over the years. They start as a grad management role today. Where might they be in 15 years' time, and what kind of development happens? That absolutely enthralled them. They loved it. They were so engaged with that kind of thing. You know, it's what they want to learn. It's what they want to know.
Chapter 14 needs to be moved to chapter 2 and chapter 17 to chapter 2.
Yeah.
But maybe you'll teach it chapter 17 early next time.
I have done in the past, Richard. Sometimes it's after the intro, it's the next one I introduce. Yeah. Wow. I have done in the past. Yeah.
We also have, I think, in chapter 1, we have that illustration with 3 strategists, all fairly young.
Yeah, it's very good.
Which may help engage them as well. But
it is good.
These are things that we need to develop. That's really helpful, Eamon.
And the illustration, I think the latest edition, we went through every chapter last year, and the illustrations, the single page illustrations are fantastic. They really are fantastic. They reinforce the theory, insights into, you know, their contemporary insights, what Gen Z can relate to. And we've got Gen Alpha coming up now, but they can relate to these insights. It's you know, that's what gets their attention. You know, that's what they're there for. That's what they want to learn about, hear about, and, you know, they take it seriously once they can relate. But so they're not snowflakes. They're not
jobs and internship. I think that's really important for us to remind ourselves when we complain about our students.
They're
juggling a lot of balls.
They are many. Yeah.
Thank you, Eamon. That's really good to hear. So 20 hours work a week plus internships plus societies. It's a tough one. Yeah. We are competing, and we have to engage.
That is it. We are competing. We have to kind of give them a reason to be there, to be present, to be engaged.
Yeah.
You know, because they're choosing between us and 3 other things.
Yeah.
You know.
So Keith mentioned the recordings of classes. For me,
it's interesting.
It means people feel they don't have to turn up.
Well, it's at Trinity, that's forbidden, Richard. We do not record anything. Nothing is recorded. And it's against policy. Anyone can ask to have a lecture recorded. I can just put my, you know, say no. That's not happening. There has to be really exceptional circumstances for a student to get a recording of a session. But otherwise, it's not permitted, simply because there was a perception of snowflakeness. They need the social development. And they're not getting social development over webinars and digital recordings. We need them in the lecture hall.
Right.
You know?
Well, that's a really good way to go. We got some more things on the Padlet, but I think I am aware that we're approaching the end of quite a long day, and there's sort of diminishing group of people here. I've found a lot of interesting ideas here, and the one I've written down particularly is Neville's on staging debate. I also got a much better appreciation of student engagement from what you were saying, Eamon, and how we need to compete for attention. We got stuff about chapter 14 as well, and that was an interesting discussion. What else on the Padlet that people would like to pick up? We got homework in a digital world. We touched on that, I think. Neville, you got your hand up. I can't hear you though.
Sorry, Richard. I was really keen. I was in Group 8, and I put the comment in the Padlet. And I know I've talked to Gerry about it. He was leading our group. Yeah, it's really trying in the age of AI, and I know one of your colleagues was talking about it earlier after lunch. It's trying. The university is looking to eliminate exams. We have 2 assignments. One's last year just gone. We had 2 assignments. One was an exam, and the other was a strategic report, where it was application of models, Pastel, Porter's by Forces, BRO, and then using the SAT criteria to come up with ideas for the companies to take forward from a list of 10 companies that had the likes of Netflix, BMW. But that was testing application. The exam was testing critique. And as I mentioned earlier, the university wants to phase out exams, which I'm hearing from other colleagues as well. And it's, as well as having a report, I need to look for an authentic assignment to replace the exam. And it was really reaching out to colleagues, because it's given, in the nicest way, it's given me a few nightmares thinking about something which is AI proof. To an undergraduate cohort, final year, level 6, I'm being told that it's going to be about 400 students. So I need to make the marking, whilst I want to make the assignment challenging, I've gone conscious of the marking requirements for such a large cohort. Again, like I said, it's just reaching out to colleagues that if any appropriate assignments that they've come out with, that they would be willing to share over the web call.
Yeah, Neville, that's a really, I think, a common problem. Rufus, there is some material that I think can be provided by via Revel. Is that correct for assessment?
Yes, there is. And I can arrange for someone to come and give you a demo of Revel if that would be interesting, and they can talk you through exactly what's in there and how it can be used.
Thank you, Rufus.
And I think it's almost semi-automatic assessment.
Yes, it is.
So you have to do some design work, I suspect, at the beginning, but once you've done that, you're away.
Yeah.
I mean, oddly enough, we've moved more to exams to beat AI. In-person exams are possible, handwritten.
Yeah.
Students loathe that. Clive.
Just a comment, because I guess we're not going to touch on it again, on simulations. As you know, we use the MSX, My Strategy Experience simulation, much more than those short ones, which are kind of like instant answer ones. But the advantage of this, it's more integrative. And what we're trying to do is get students to actually, work with and apply strategy. And it's not, it takes them, certainly a few meetings, perhaps a long weekend, perhaps longer. But a couple of points pertinent to stuff that's come on. First of all, we use that particularly in the assessments. They don't get assessed on, how they've actually done in the simulation, since their company or anything like that. But it really does facilitate authentic, as it's called these days, assessments, because they can't just drag up on ChatGPT or something like that. They have to, integrate it with what they've actually done. And I think we've certainly found that's given us a bit of protection over the last 18 months or so. I think one of the other things is this kind of sense of debate. And because we certainly advocate doing it in groups, and because it's kind of a fairly gentle start and they do it over a series of meetings, the final stages, then it doesn't mean they get, and we kind of look in sometimes, they get the kind of experience of trying to, have the different viewpoints, kind of arguing in a safe space. Without it being directed by us. And I think particularly for final year undergrads and perhaps even more so for master's students, I think we found that's beneficial. And it has the added benefit that they don't think there's lots to read. I think if you actually kind of accumulate it, there's probably as much as in some of the longer case studies. But I think for all of those things, it touches on several of the points we've had here. So I think we're probably not going to get a chance to discuss it in more detail, but even to Neville, I would say, do think of that as a way of kind of replacing the exams, because again, it's something they have to do from their own experience, and that's really valuable, we see.
Yeah, so that's proof against AI solutions, and it does encourage debate. I know Rufus can help inform you on the strategy simulation. And I know also that Clive in the past has acted as a kind of consultant very kindly. I don't know whether he'll do this again, to advise people on how actually to use it in practice. I've seen the classes and they're very impressive that are run using the simulation. It does get people really engaged and competing for attention. I think it's a winner.
I think one of the kind of just the measures, Richard, is the number of students who are still turning up in the final weeks of the semester, which is probably our rather kind of ad hoc measure of, okay, well, at least we're getting a better degree of engagement than with some of the other techniques we used to use.
Yeah, so you get empty class lecture theatres clear generally by towards the end, not necessarily for the time when you're explaining the exam to them, but the ones I've seen, people do really get excited and they want to be there as they get closer to the finishing line.
Yeah, I mean, I think the short version, Richard, is we're trying to get them to do strategy as well as learn about strategy. And of course, it's a bit elemental, but even when they go on to assessment workshops and interviews, I think often we get the feedback that it's been a useful, practical way of showing they can do strategy.
Yeah, so the strategy experience simulation is a great one, and it's supported by the case study, I think, in chapter 3 as well, which is on the advertising industry, which the simulation is about. It's quite engaging with some nice characters, and it's well produced as well. It's a quality piece of software. I think right, Dewey, that's an endorsement. You skipped 2 of the 6 rounds. Okay, well that's a very useful bit of practical advice, yeah, because not everybody will be able to run the 6 rounds. Gerry, if you wanted a last word on that before we close, then I'll be very delighted to have it.
Yeah, thank you. So funny enough, I ran this a couple of weeks ago with some level 6 students, and they always love it. And we always put them into groups and we get competition between the groups, which is always fantastic. So we congratulate the one group is doing well early on. And then we sort of pull them up later on when their performance isn't quite so good and that type of thing. But yeah, we struggle a little bit for time on that particular module. So to make it run in about 3 or 4 hours, I basically say, for this round, type in A1, B for 3, whatever. Do that for the first round so that they all have a chance to get used to how the thing works. So that's like a practice round. And then I lose one of the other rounds later on. But yeah, really enjoy the sim, definitely.
Fab. Thank you very much for that endorsement and practical advice. We should close there. I'm going to thank everybody who persisted. I'm going to thank the author team, but above all, I'm going to thank Rufus, who's given away a day's holiday and has spent it. We all hate a day on Teams. He has spent it on Teams or Zoom, as it happens, on his little iPhone or whatever he's got. Amazing, amazing. Thank you. And I hope your family will forgive you.
No, well, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. I've actually really enjoyed today. I always really enjoy these days. And if it makes any better, I'll be outside in a swimming pool with a cold beer in about 5 minutes from now.
Show us a picture of that clear blue Croatian sky and inspire us. Oh. Oh, how lovely. Okay, Rufus. I don't know whether we can stay on just the author team for 3 minutes just to round up amongst ourselves, but we'll be, if you don't mind, can we say goodbye to everybody else so the three of us can just
Bye-bye.
touch.
Thank you.
Yeah. A big
Bye,
thank
thanks,
you
everybody.
from me. We will be following up, sending the slides and everything in the next week or so. Big thank you for everyone for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.